We're going to start, Charlie, with the guy we talked about last week, Bobby Brink. Bobby Brink, we were like, he's making the team. They're not going to put him on waivers. But it is a crucial year and a crucial camp for him to kind of just cement himself as a top 9 forward for this team. Maybe not be the 13th forward, maybe not be an extra guy. You know, if we named a couple of forwards, like, okay, if they were to kick the door down, whose spot is vulnerable? Maybe it's Bobby Brink's. He had the demotion last year. He gets benched in that game 82. Tortorella liked Brink one right away and then saw some slipping. We're not quite sure where Torts is right now with Bobby Brink. Hell of a first impression, I thought. A couple of goals. You called him the best player on the ice.
I thought he was. I thought start to finish, he was the most impactful. Other guys ended up having similar stat lines. I think Joel Farabee finished with 1 goal and 3 assists, so he had the most points of any Flyer. But I thought Bobby Brink, from the very first shift, was the most consistently impactful Flyer on the ice on Sunday night, which was great to see. And we talked to John Tortorella a little bit on Bobby Brink. I believe it was the day before. I think it was Saturday. And I asked him, I maybe didn't go at it as direct as I wanted to in my first question. I asked him about Bobby Brink and kind of his thoughts on him. And Torts basically said, ask me in a few days. I want to see how he looks in preseason. And then I straight up said, what I really was getting at was, because I compared him to Cam York. Was he where Cam York was at going into last year's camp? And I don't think he quite understood what I was getting at. But then I went back with a second question. I said, really what I was getting at was, at the start of last year's camp, you said about Cam York, you don't know if he's a full-time NHL player yet. And then obviously Cam York last season very much proved that he was an NHL player. And I asked, is that where you see Bobby? And Torres basically was just like, yes, that is where I see Bobby. So he's coming into this camp with the belief that Bobby Brink needs to prove that he should be in the lineup for 82 games or however many games he's going to play if he's injured or whatever. And I felt like for this game, the very first preseason game, he could not have made a better first impression. He looked fantastic.
And that was absolutely what I saw last night. Was a guy who was all over the place. He looked great. Again, scored the goals. And yeah, for a guy who has something to prove, that's tremendous. And I think it's another, like we said when we talked about Brink last Thursday or whatever it was, like, he's clearly too good for the AHL. When he was playing hurt his first year, he still put up good numbers. He gets demoted last year, 13 points in 13 games, and against a young guy prospect, some NHLers. It's not as if there were no NHLers out there, but depth guys and the Hershey Bears, basically. He was the best player on the ice. I think that tells you, like, okay, maybe he's not a full-time NHLer, but he has to be, because there's nothing else for him to do at this lower level. Like, the NHL is where he has to now make or break it for himself. It's obvious when there's lesser talent out there, he can take advantage of it. And that's what it did last night. And now it's just got to carry over to when he plays some more NHLers. Charlie, what does it say about Bobby Brink that he's playing again tonight? One of only, I think, 2 guys in both lineups.
It's interesting, and that jumped out at me as well, because it was a little odd. Like, the 2 guys who were playing both games, because the Flyers will be playing up in Montreal tonight, I believe at 7 p.m. I'm not covering that game in person, but apparently there's going to be a stream on the Philadelphia Flyers website. So if you want to watch it there, feel free. Hopefully it's of decent quality. I guess we'll find out. The 2 guys who are playing in both games are Bobby Brink and Lixell. Now, Lixell makes sense to me. He's very much on the bubble. He's 25 years old. He's no longer waiver exempt. If he's going to make the team out of camp, this is going to be when he does it. He needs to get every opportunity possible for them to get as much information possible to make the decision as to whether, do we want to keep him as the 13th or the 14th forward? Do we want to risk sending him through waivers because he's just not that important to us? That makes sense. Brink, on the other hand, was surprising, because not only in our minds is he a lock to at least make the team, but he also had a fantastic game last night. Here's what I think it was, because I specifically asked John Tortorella what the thinking was. He mentioned that Garnet Hathaway was supposed to play in this game. And the reason why he's not is because Garnet Hathaway's wife is like in that weird spot where like she might go into labor at any time, but she's not quite in labor yet. And they don't want him to be up in Montreal when they find out that she has to get rushed to the hospital. So he's staying local primarily. Like he'll probably get in Thursday's game because it's local and they could always pull him out of the lineup if they have to. But I don't think they want him in Montreal in case like he's going to miss the birth of his kid. So I wouldn't be surprised if Brink is the replacement for Hathaway. And also there's an element too where I bet the Flyers are intrigued. They saw a really good performance by Brink last night. You have an opportunity to find something else about a guy. Why not throw him back out there and see what he can do? I think that's where they're at.
That was my thinking was, all right, yeah, the Garnet Hathaway thing, that kind of adds a another level to it, but they could play literally anybody. You know, there's there's no shortage of wingers for this team in this organization. That said, I think this is a test for Bobby Brink. What did he struggle with last year? Habits and consistency. That's what we heard. Is he consistent enough? Does he have the same habits day in, day out? All right, you played a great game last night. Congratulations, Bobby. We're happy for you. Go be better tonight. Go show us that same player 2 nights in a row. Like, I think this is kind of one of those early tests for Bobby Brink, and it's a great spot for him to kind of prove that he has put in the work and improved in the areas the team asked him to in the offseason. I think this is a really good early test for Bobby Brink, and as a fan of his, I'm just hoping for another game like that because I want to see him in the lineup every single night. I think he is one of these guys. No, he's not a first-round pick, and he's not, oh, man, diamond in the rough in the 5th round, but a 2nd-round pick who's put up the numbers he did in college, you're really kind of hoping that you got a little something here out of this 2nd-round pick, and I think they did. I just want to see it more. Just want to see that guy more often that we saw in Bobby Brink.
We all silly like the mayor.